There is a version of you the world has never met. This version is colder than any fear, sharper than any situation, calm even when pressure crushes down, and ruthless when necessary. No gaze or compliment can reach it, and no criticism can shake it. This version doesn't emerge from parties, isn't raised in comfort, and certainly isn't born from flattery. It only appears when you disappear, when you withdraw completely from the noise, when every connection is cut, and it's just you with yourself. True strength is never built in safety. It is forged when every dependency is stripped away, the friends you don't need, the validation you still crave, the hollow pleasures, and the sweet but useless distractions. When only you and your bare mind remain, all artificial supports vanish, revealing the true foundation, whether strong or weak. That's when it becomes clear. In this state, no one comes to save you, no one comes to lead you, and no one cares to entertain your complaints. There are only two choices: rebuild or collapse. Most will never reach this threshold. They cannot bear the weight of silence. They look for a way back to the noise, hiding behind meaningless conversations, soothing themselves with familiar relationships. They don't realize that solitude is the gateway to a form of power the crowd will never touch. This power is not something sold or handed over. It must be forged from within, in an environment where there is no room for deception. When you stay in solitude long enough, the masks you once wore will fall off on their own. There is no one to legitimize poor decisions, no one to blame, no allies to help maintain illusions. The truth will appear, bare and hard to swallow. The weaknesses you've hidden, the destructive habits you still cling to, the false goals you've pursued just to be praised. Painful, but necessary. Because only when you see yourself clearly can you decide what to discard and what to keep. The untouchable version begins the moment you stop seeking approval. You no longer ask for opinions before acting. You no longer explain the reasons for your moves. You stop waiting for permission to advance. At that point, every decision is weighed on the scales of logic and strategy, not pushed by emotional impulse. Every step, every word becomes an intentional choice, not a reflex. What's frightening about this version is that it cannot be owned. It does not live on someone else's light, does not need applause to affirm its worth. Whoever possesses it can disappear at any time and return with even greater power, because all resources are accumulated in silence. This is what terrifies those who once controlled you through attention. They realize you are no longer within reach. But to get here, you must endure the discomfort of your own company. Solitude does not forgive mental weakness. It will expose every crack and test every limit. At that moment, the fragile will run back to familiar arms, while the determined will learn to turn the emptiness into leverage. You start using the quiet as a discrete battlefield, where plans are built, strategies sharpened, and your thinking becomes more precise each day. This version also understands that overexposure reduces value. Distance becomes a tool. Appearances are calculated so that each one carries weight. Silence is not avoidance. It's the space to observe, analyze, and shape the game before making a move. When you appear, you already know what you want and how to get it, not needing to touch everyone, but enough to shift what needs to be shifted. Finally, remember this. No one can hand you this version. It is not a gift, nor a title. It is the result of separating yourself from the crowd, enduring the pressure of truth, and using it to restructure yourself. Once complete, you will realize that true strength does not lie in being known by many, but in the ability to walk without needing anyone, fearing no one, and being stopped by no one. That is the foundation of an untouchable human being. Isolation is when you're pushed out of the game, left in a dark corner no one wants to look at. Strategy is when you step away from the crowd, leave the noisy tables, and choose a position no one can reach. The difference lies in control. Isolation is passive, strategy is active. When isolation happens to you, you grow weaker by the day under the weight of abandonment. When you choose separation strategically, you grow stronger by the hour because you know that distance is a weapon. Most people live their entire lives inside a thick fog, the fog of opinions, the fog of emotions, the fog of stories repeated from one person to another. They don't realize that most of the beliefs and decisions they carry weren't made by them, but implanted through countless aimless conversations. They react instead of act, blend in instead of stand out, and worst of all, learn to deceive themselves because there's always someone nearby helping maintain the illusion. Step outside this loop and a completely different scene appears. In the silence, fake praise and shallow consensus dissolve. The friends who only show up when convenient also vanish. The truth begins to surface, the truth about human nature, about conditional relationships, about how loyalty mostly exists only as long as it remains useful. You'll see clearly that most fear being controlled by force, yet readily accept being controlled by finesse. The polite crowd will never admit this, but spend enough time alone and you'll know. In that moment, solitude stops being a burden. It becomes a sealed laboratory where every layer of pretension is peeled back, revealing the actual structure of power. This isn't something you can learn from books or advice. You only touch it when you cut the noise completely. The advantage you gain now goes far beyond what others imagine. You see what they don't, understand what they can't, and act at a level they cannot keep up with. While others busy themselves adjusting to please those around them, you are adjusting the board to suit your objective. While they chase quick pleasures, you occupy positions they never consider. While they try to play the roles assigned by society, you are writing your own script. This is the difference between someone who is isolated and someone who chooses strategic separation. One is left behind. The other steps out in order to move forward. To turn solitude into strategy, drop the need to be praised, recognized, and approved. Value distance and silence more than constant presence. Understand that continual appearances erode value, and that sometimes the strongest power comes from making others guess what you're doing, instead of letting them see it with their own eyes. When you master this distance, every observation grows sharper. You no longer stop at the surface, you detect the motives behind behavior, the weaknesses hidden with care, and the fragile links that can be snapped with a precise strike. That capability is unavailable to anyone trapped in the noisy swirl. They're too busy reacting to every small change to see the larger picture. Strategic separation isn't about running away. It's about controlling the tempo. When you're no longer dragged by the crowd's rhythm, you decide when to appear and when to disappear, when to attack and when to defend. Every move becomes an intentional choice instead of a reflex triggered by circumstances. That is the crucial difference. The isolated chase events, the strategically separate make events orbit around them. And when you return, you don't come back as someone who merely survived. You return as a force fully prepared. You'll startle those who once thought they knew you. Fewer words, colder tone, harder to read, and most importantly, you no longer need them. This wipes out every lever they once used to control you. That's the moment solitude turns into power, and strategy becomes the thing that shapes the outcome of the game. Not everyone has the courage to take this path. Most will choose the noise because it's easy, familiar, and gives the feeling of belonging. But real power doesn't lie in belonging. It lies in the ability to stand alone and still make the entire board tremble. If you want to weaponize silence and turn distance into advantage, remember this. Stepping away from the crowd does not make you weaker as long as you move with clear intent and keep your eyes open to what others miss. Separation is not just about physical distance. It is the act of withdrawing from meaningless cycles to stand in a position where you can see the entire landscape. While others get caught in small skirmishes, you choose a high, quiet vantage point from which to view the whole battlefield. This distance is an advantage because it allows you to escape direct emotional influence and see everything with a cold eye and a calculating mind. When you step out of the carousel of attention, you start to see what was once hidden by the noise. You begin to clearly distinguish who truly respects you, who only fears losing benefits, and who plays the role of being friendly simply because it's convenient. Compliments become suspicious, promises become conditional, and you realize that every relationship rests on a fragile balance between interest and need. This is information most people miss because they are too busy chasing the feeling of being liked. Separation also strips away lies both from others and from yourself. You see the illusions you once believed, the goals you set not for yourself but to please others. When those illusions fall away, you can finally look at events and people as they truly are. No longer blurred by the need for acceptance, you begin building strategy based on real data, not feelings. The greatest advantage of separation is leverage. While most are led by immediate emotions, you have the time and space to calculate your moves. They react hastily. You position yourself deliberately. They chase short-term pleasure. You prepare a position for long-term control. While they play the roles society assigns them, you are writing the script that shapes the stage itself. From a position of separation, you rarely reveal your intentions. Others are left to guess your motives, your goals, and your next move. This ambiguity makes you harder to attack because no one has a firm grip on you. On the other hand, you can read them more clearly because from a distance, patterns of behavior and repeated reactions reveal themselves like an open map. Separation is also a shield against manipulation. When you don't depend on anyone's presence or praise, you become difficult to control. No one can punish you with silence, and no one can lure you with attention. You've built yourself an independent operating system, a foundation of power that few possess. What makes this advantage so sharp is that it lets you choose when to strike. You don't need to appear constantly to prove yourself. You only appear when the board is set and your strike is guaranteed to land. Every appearance has purpose, and because it's rare, it carries weight. This is how a single move can have more impact than dozens of someone else's actions. In a separated environment, you can experiment without fear of being watched. No one interferes with plans that are still forming. No one sabotages ideas before they mature. You test, you adjust, and you only reveal when the result is strong enough to be undeniable. This creates the image of someone who always emerges with achievements, while in reality, you've been preparing for a long time. Separation also allows you to control your own pace. You don't have to follow the rhythm of the crowd, a rhythm that is chaotic, unstable, and easily swept away by false priorities. You set your own pace, your own rhythm, and adjust it according to your overall strategy. This rhythm is decided by no one but you, and that is why you remain in control. Finally, the advantage of separation is the ability to see patterns others overlook. From afar, you clearly spot the recurring cycles. Who will betray when interests shift? Who will back down under pressure? Who will break ranks when fear strikes? You don't need to react immediately. You simply remember and use that information at the right moment. That's how you turn observation into power and distance into a tool of dominance. The distance you create is not to leave the game, but to control it. When you understand that silence, observation, and preparation combine into the ultimate weapon, you will see that separation is not a barrier. It is the launch pad to go further than anyone still trapped in the noise. And when you return from that position, you are not just a player in the game. You are the one setting the rules for the entire board. Dependency is an invisible chain stronger than any prison. It needs no lock, no guard, because you are the one tightening it around your own neck. Every time you seek validation from others to feel worthy, every time you wait for a compliment before trusting your own decision, every time you fear losing attention, you are handing control over to someone else. And once that power leaves your hands, personal strength becomes nothing but an illusion. Emotional dependency is the simplest yet most effective tool of control. By merely giving you the feeling of being liked, they can steer your actions. By withdrawing attention, they can throw you off balance. Those who live on the approval of the crowd are always predictable, easy to manipulate, and quick to fall because they do not act from within. They only react to external triggers. Self-mastery begins when you end this need, when you no longer wait for praise to move forward, when you no longer need agreement to begin, when your worth is no longer hanging on someone else's lips. You have broken the first link. That is the moment you shift from being led to becoming self-directed. And what's terrifying for those who once controlled you is that from this point, they lose their most important lever. Self-mastery does not mean shutting down emotions. It means refusing to let them be dictated by factors beyond your control. You can listen to opinions without feeling compelled to change just to please someone. You can welcome affection without needing it to survive. When the need for validation disappears, you are no longer a hostage to the gaze of others. This process requires standing alone long enough to grow comfortable with silence, with being unnoticed, even with being misunderstood or disliked. It's not a pleasant state because it forces you to confront the fear of abandonment, a social instinct deeply rooted in human nature. But without overcoming it, you will remain in a cage built from the bars of approval. Self-mastery rests on 3 pillars. The first is internal confidence, a source of strength that requires no external refueling. The second is self-direction, the ability to make decisions based on data and objectives, not the crowd's reactions. The third is self-sustainability, the capacity to operate, progress, and recover without constant encouragement or support from others. When these 3 pillars stand firm, no external emotional force can shake you. A mentally self-mastered person cannot be bought with praise, nor threatened with silence. They are immune to the pull close, push away games many use to keep others in a dependent state. Instead of being drawn into their game, you choose to withdraw all your energy from any relationship or environment that no longer serves your objectives. This is the definitive power shift, from passively reacting to actively setting the rules. Breaking dependency also means cutting off the comfort sources that keep you stagnant, the people who constantly soothe you so you never face your mistakes, the temporary entertainments that help you forget the emptiness, the conversations that reassure you, this is good enough. These are not supports, they are velvet chains. Cutting them will feel like a loss, but that gap is exactly the space where true strength is built. When you are no longer dependent, no one controls your pace or direction. You move at your own rhythm, never rushed because someone pushes, never slowed because someone holds you back. You no longer fear missing out, because you know value does not come from being everywhere, but from showing up at the right time, in the right place, with a weight that cannot be ignored. The greatest advantage of a foundation of self-mastery is becoming unpredictable. When no one knows what you need from them, they cannot control you. When they see you advancing without support, they start to tread carefully. And when they understand that you cannot be swayed by praise or criticism, they are forced to respect you whether they want to or not. Breaking dependency is not just liberation, it is the redefinition of power. You no longer wait for permission to act, you become the source of permission. You no longer wait to be chosen, you choose. And in this world, the one who needs no one is the one who can do anything. Self-mastery is the foundation. Everything you build on it will stand firm, no matter the time or the pressure. Distance is the invisible wall that shields your power from erosion. It is not pointless coldness, but a strategy to ensure your value is not drained by overexposure. Power does not grow when you allow unrestricted access. It grows when every appearance you make carries weight and influence. Distance makes presence rare, and what is rare is always desired, respected, even feared. Those who do not know how to create distance will soon lose their position. Excessive closeness breeds familiarity, familiarity breeds contempt, and once contempt sets in, power disappears. In contrast, maintaining the right distance forces others to guess your intentions, create their own theories, and constantly question you. In that ambiguity, you control the game. Distance is also a natural filter. When you are no longer easily accessible, those who approach you must have a compelling reason. This eliminates those seeking convenience and preserves valuable connections. You are no longer drawn into trivial conversations or invitations that do not serve your objectives. Your time and energy are instead devoted to observing, calculating, and preparing strategic moves. Creating distance does not mean disappearing entirely, but appearing with intent. Every time you step into a situation, it should feel different from what people usually see. Shorter words, sharper eyes, longer silences all create an invisible pressure that makes others adjust their behavior. You do not need to speak much, because distance itself sends the message: you are not here to seek approval, you are here to shape the outcome. Distance also allows you to control information. When you are not constantly present, you can choose what others know about you. The parts you want to keep private remain out of reach, and everything you reveal serves your long-term goals. While others inadvertently expose their weaknesses through overexposure, you make every fact about yourself difficult to predict, even harder to verify. Human psychology always ties value to scarcity. If a resource is constantly available and easily accessed, it will be taken for granted. Your power is no different. By maintaining distance, you create the perception that your time, attention, and presence are limited resources. This forces others to value the opportunity when they have it, while increasing your bargaining power in any situation. Distance also acts as mental protection. Too much closeness pulls you into other people's emotions and problems, stripping away your ability to see objectively. Stepping back allows you to observe without absorbing their emotions, keeping your mind sharp and your decisions clear. This is a necessary condition for maintaining position, because decisions driven by emotion rarely serve strategic interests. Those who understand the power of distance do not chase every invitation, do not rush to respond to every call, and are unafraid of being misunderstood when they withdraw. They know that hasty reactions are often the starting point of manipulation. In contrast, calculated slowness allows you to set the rhythm, turning others into the ones who must react. Applying distance effectively requires discipline. You must resist the instinct to join in, to be constantly present, to share endlessly. You must be able to endure being misjudged, misunderstood, or even resented for being inaccessible. In return, you retain absolute control over your energy and strategy. Distance is a barrier that protects power, but it is also the platform from which it grows. From a safe vantage point, you have time to read the situation, identify threats, and spot opportunities before they become visible to others. When it's time to act, you do not rush in aimlessly. You step in with an advantage that has been prepared long in advance. And that is why every move you make carries far more weight than those still running in circles to maintain presence. Keeping your distance does not remove you from the game. On the contrary, it gives you a higher position from which you not only participate, but also shape the rules. Those who know how to wield distance as a weapon will never be caught in the cycle of power depletion, because they have built an invisible barrier that no one can cross without permission. The moment you withdraw from the noise and stand alone long enough, every decorative layer around you will fall away. No admiring gaze to hide your flaws, no agreement to reinforce your ego, no social role to cling to. Only the naked truth remains raw, cold, and non-negotiable. This is the real test of power, because it doesn't measure what you can display to others. It measures the strength you maintain when no one is watching. In absolute silence, the excuses you've been using to soothe yourself lose all meaning. You see your own laziness clearly, recognize the fake goals created just to impress, and confront the habits quietly destroying your progress. With nowhere to hide and no one to blame, you are forced to face the truth that most of your limits are self-imposed. The feeling is harsh, but it is the only doorway to real power. Most never cross this threshold. They run the moment the truth starts to surface, seeking back the noise and the comfortable relationships that shield them from pressure. But those who stay, enduring the blinding glare of truth, gain a kind of strength nothing else can replace, the ability to live and act without illusion. This naked truth also teaches that in the realm of power, emotions are tools, not guiding stars. When you see everything without the fog of wanting to be liked, you realize that fear in others can be maintained from a distance, without constant contact. Respect can be built on competence and results, not on being pleasant or accessible. And the most unshakable confidence is the kind that does not depend on reflected light from others, but shines from within. Enduring the naked truth means you have moved beyond the need to defend your weaknesses. You no longer need to shield your ego from the sting of criticism because you've already seen your flaws before anyone else points them out. This makes you a dangerous opponent. No one can use the truth against you when you already own it, accept it, and wield it as part of your strategy. Real power doesn't come from hiding flaws, but from standing firm even when they are exposed. When you are no longer swayed by the gaze of others, you are no longer controlled by it. You become the steady center in the storm of collective emotion. They react, you calculate. They defend against remarks. You attack with information distilled from cold observation. This power test also measures your capacity to endure loneliness. Power always demands a certain level of separation, and if you cannot withstand being cut off from emotional validation, you will soon be pulled back into someone else's control. Those who cannot endure the void often return for comfort, but in exchange, they surrender their independence and position. When you pass this stage, a profound shift occurs. You are no longer driven by the need to be right, only by the need to see clearly. You no longer fight to protect an image, but focus on protecting substance. You begin to notice patterns others miss, anticipate the moves of your opponents, and identify the weaknesses in the surrounding structures of power. At this level, every action you take is strategic, not reactive. The naked truth is not only a test but also a purification. It strips away illusions, unnecessary relationships, and habits that do not serve your goals. It forces you to streamline both your mind and your strategy so that when you return, you are a concentrated version of yourself, sharper, colder, and more untouchable than ever. Once you have crossed this threshold, you understand why so few achieve lasting power. Most quit because they cannot bear the feeling of being stripped of illusions. But if you dare to stay, to look, and to endure, you gain an advantage the crowd will never have: absolute freedom from the validation game of others. And that is the foundation upon which any power you build afterward can never be taken away. Time is the only currency that, once spent, you can never earn back. It is scarcer than gold, more valuable than any return, and more dangerous than any weapon when misused. Money lost can be regained, reputation rebuilt, but an hour that passes is gone forever. And in the game of power, the one who controls their own time will always dominate. The one who lives by someone else's schedule. Most men spend time the way an addict tosses coins. They wake up in a reactive state, letting alarms, messages, and other people's requests dictate their entire rhythm. They sit in meetings for goals that don't matter, meet people they don't need, and entertain themselves to forget the emptiness instead of filling it with strategic moves. When time is shredded like that, they turn themselves into mobile pawns, always busy, going nowhere. You never let others define how you use your time. You guard every hour like territory. Not every invitation gets a yes, not every request gets a response, and not every opportunity deserves participation. The rule is clear: if an activity doesn't move you closer to the goal, it does not exist on the calendar. People might call you cold. In truth, it is absolute priority for the rarest currency you own. Time becomes a weapon when you know how to weaponize it. Temporal distance delaying your response, refusing to rush your appearance, creates invisible pressure. Others are forced to wait and adjust their tempo to yours. In negotiation, the one who can hold the silence longer wins. In strategy, the one who waits for the right moment lands the decisive strike. And in power, the one who sets the tempo controls the outcome. The danger of time is that it can be a loyal ally or a ruthless traitor. Use it well and it compounds like interest. A single year of total focus can put you a decade ahead. Use it poorly, and it quietly erodes every opportunity until you wake up too late. That's why you carve out protected blocks not to rest, but to calculate, adjust, and plan the next move. One immutable principle: everyone has 24 hours, but not all 24 are equal. 1 hour in absolute focus is worth more than 10 hours fractured by noise. The difference between the one who leads and the one who follows often isn't talent, It's how they protect and deploy time. Leaders turn it into a strategic asset. Followers let it slip away like sand through their fingers. Mastering time means mastering personal power. When you set the blocks for work, study, training, and rest on your own terms, you escape society's invisible control. You stop being a puppet pulled by the common timetable and become the one who creates a rhythm others must adapt to. This doesn't just make you more effective, it raises your value in everyone's eyes. Scarcity always carries prestige. Time is also the test that reveals who truly controls their life. The person who is always available controls nothing. They burn out from being pulled in every direction, lose focus by handling other people's tasks, and forfeit long-term vision because there's no room left to think. In contrast, the one who knows how to say no preserves the space to reflect, see far, and act precisely. The truth is, controlling time equals controlling mental space. When you lock your calendar against the useless, you create room for big strategy. When you stop spending time on people who don't matter, you free energy to invest in those and in projects that deliver real returns. This isn't selfishness. It's the discipline of someone who intends to endure at the top. Finally, remember, time is the most dangerous currency because it decides not only what you do but who you become. Every hour is an investment either in a stronger version of you or in stagnation. In this game, the one who chooses wisely becomes the rule setter. The squanderer bows and lives by others' rules. And when you truly master time, you don't just move faster, you make the whole world run on your tempo. Once you have passed through every layer of control from emotional dependency, the fear of solitude, to discipline over time, you are no longer just a player in a game set by someone else. You become the one who sets the rules, shapes the board, and dictates the tempo. At this point, your power is not only in winning, but in defining what winning means. And this is a position very few ever reach. The one who shapes the game does not need to appear constantly to prove their position. They know the greatest power is the kind that is not always visible. They let others speculate, invent their own stories, and that very ambiguity becomes a tool of psychological control. When others cannot grasp the full picture, they act in uncertainty, and in that uncertainty, you are the one leading. To maintain this position, you must understand one principle. Power does not exist if you allow it to be drained into small battles. Every move, every appearance, every word you speak must serve a long-term objective. This demands the ability to refuse most invitations, opportunities, or provocations. A skilled player knows when to attack. The one who shapes the game knows when not to move at all, yet still causes the board to shift. The difference lies in vision. Players focus on the next move. Game shapers focus on the structure of the entire game. They don't just react to situations, they create them. They don't wait for opportunities, they engineer the circumstances for those opportunities to appear at exactly the right moment. When you reach this level, your opponents don't even realize they are following the path you have already mapped out. To shape the game, you must master space and time. Space knowing where your presence will have the greatest impact and where your absence will cut the deepest. Time knowing when to appear to cause a shock and when to disappear to create scarcity. When you combine both, you create a rhythm of your own that everyone else is forced to follow. A game shaper also controls the flow of information. They reveal just enough to direct the narrative, but never the whole picture. Every piece of data, rumor, or signal they release serves a purpose. This keeps others in a constant state of reaction, trying to decode, while you calmly observe as they expose their own weaknesses. This position also demands the ability to endure isolation at a higher level. The further you advance, the fewer people will truly understand or walk alongside you. The difference in vision makes you an exception, and exceptions are always scrutinized. But once you are used to operating outside the validation circle of the masses, you will find this is the ideal environment for power to grow without being diluted. The one who shapes the game does not seek to be liked, they seek to be influential. They do not need everyone's agreement, only that everyone is forced to account for them when making decisions. True power does not lie in what others think of you, but in the fact that they cannot ignore you. This can only be achieved when you combine strategic vision, control over resources, and unwavering commitment to your principles. Most importantly, you never allow anyone to fully measure your capabilities. When they think they understand you, you change the rhythm. When they think they've reached you, you pull further away. When they expect you to react, you remain silent. This unpredictability makes you an irreplaceable factor in any structure of power. Becoming the one who shapes the game is the ultimate destination of the journey to personal power. From controlling yourself, mastering distance, breaking dependency, to absolute command over your time, everything leads to the moment when you not only play by the rules, but rewrite them. And when you are in this position, you understand that winning is not the end, it is the tool to keep designing a game only you can win. When you leave the table, the game stops. When you enter, everything shifts. And when you are silent, the entire board still waits for your move. That is ultimate power, not occupying every square, but controlling the entire board. And once you reach this position, you don't just live in the game, you become the reason it exists.